Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. We're not at Rendazzo's.
No.
We're at David's place.
What's up, guys?
What's up, man? And I wasn't here last week because I was deathly ill.
I was all alone. It was
We
so
were all
sad.
alone, and I was sick at home. I was drinking soup and trying to get better because I went to Vegas for the Chavez Martinez fight.
Sure did. And
We came prepared because we had the munchies, kind of like Chavez Jr. did. I'm sure by the time you guys see this this episode of Boxing During Dinner, you would have found out that Julio Cesar Chavez tested positive for marijuana, which is weird because it's not a performance-enhancing drug like many people were accusing him of.
Yeah.
He likes to smoke pot.
And not only that, but in his last fight, he was trying to beat a DUI case before the fight. So it's alcohol one fight, it's marijuana the next. Maybe it'll be cocaine and it'll escalate to some real drugs the next time.
And it sucks because, yes, Chavez Jr. got his ass kicked for about 11 rounds, but in the last round he showed some hope, he showed some balls. He came out, dropped Sergio Martinez, led to a lot of questions. Led to the questions, what if it would have been a 15-rounder? What if Chavez would have started this onslaught earlier in the fight? Now we may not find out because of this positive drug test.
Yeah, the what ifs don't really matter to me though at this point. I think the marijuana test is inconsequential from a fight perspective. It is consequential from a what happens next type of perspective because this may hurt Chavez at the negotiating table in a potential rematch. But for 11 and a half rounds, Sergio Martinez outclassed Julio Cesar Chavez in every facet of the game. Unlike many other people who do seem to want to see a rematch, I don't see any sense in it. I think besides the fact that Sergio Martinez is going to make a lot of money for it, in fact, the best and worst thing he did in that fight was put himself at risk in the last round instead of boxing around because he put the fight at risk, but at the same time, in what was a one-sided affair, all of a sudden became, oh, what would have happened type of thing. He sold a rematch by getting hurt in the final round, and now this was already his biggest payday. He stands to make, in a rematch that Bob Arum is already planning to stage at Dallas Cowboys Stadium, he stands to make even more money the second time around. All, signs are that this pay-per-view did extremely well. So, and one of our fans, Victor Corniel, said, which I thought was poetic, that in the final round, what Martinez did was both stupid and beautiful. and I'd mentioned to a friend that I was watching with, Daniel Placeres, he's going to tell me that I said his name Plasteres or something like that, but that Martinez is not the kind of guy who's going to go out and dance around for the final round to claim a victory. He's going to try to finish Chavez off. I think that's what he tried to do, and it didn't do him well.
And that's what he tried to do, and like you said, for 11 rounds he boxed beautifully. In about the 7th or 8th round, I turned around to the guy behind me, which wasn't just the guy behind me, it was Bernardo Osuna from ESPN,
Yeah.
and I told him, you know what, this smells like a corner stoppage. I thought Chavez was going to quit. There was one round, he even looked at the referee, and I was like, holy crap, he's gonna quit. Yeah. But he didn't. He hung in there. He was bleeding from his nose. He was all beat up, and to his credit, he hung in there. Like you said, it was a one-sided fight for 11 and a half rounds. But I wouldn't mind seeing the rematch just because throughout the whole fight, I kept thinking, who do I want to see Sergio Martinez fight? You start thinking of all these names while you're seeing him, pitch a shutout. You think of Floyd Mayweather. Would that ever happen? Would Mayweather go up? You think of Andre Ward. You're like, maybe Andre Ward's a little too big for him. You think of Canelo. You think of Cotto. You think of a whole bunch of names. And all of a sudden, Chavez Jr. has this guy on Queer Street, almost knocks him out in the last round. And all of a sudden, you're like, holy shit, I may want to see the rematch. And then you think about this also, David. Chavez Sr., obviously, Chavez Sr., Freddie Roach, etc. The Chavez camp is going to come out after the fight and say, wait, this wasn't the Chavez that fought Andy Lee. This wasn't the Chavez that fought other guys. Obviously, he had a more talented fighter in front of him. But at the same time, Chavez usually comes in about 160 flat because, he can lose all the weight, sometimes even maybe a little over. Right. He has to lose the weight. This time he came in at 158. And at the weigh-in, he looked...
Like
he looked
was a
white. He looked like this, dude. Yeah. At the weigh-in, his stomach. I mean, it wasn't just flat. It was like almost like caved in.
Yeah.
He looked horrible at the weigh-in. When he walked by me, I was like, this guy's in bad shape. Yeah. He was in a bad mood. He did a couple of interviews, and he didn't even go to the locker room. He just jetted out the back way through the alley.
I mean, no wonder he rehydrated so much. He smoked weed and filled up and ate as much as
pot, ate this freaking bag. See, this shit's light, David.
Yeah.
Everybody says, how does he gain 20, 30 pounds after the fight?
He smokes weed and eats
smokes
Tostitos.
pot and eats fucking Tostitos. but Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., like I was saying, man, at least he showed balls. You know, he could have quit. I thought the weight affected him, even though he's still slow as shit. But the weight affected him. But, you know, do we want to see the rematch? I would want to see the rematch just because I don't know who else Sergio Martinez would fight. I mean,
yeah.
Do you really want to see him against Mayweather or Andre Ward?
I don't want to see him against Ward. I think the fight against Mayweather is a little bit more interesting because...
And more competitive.
And more competitive. I think Andre Ward is totally going to outclass Sergio Martinez. And that's not a knock on Martinez. I think that Ward is going to outclass everyone who gets in the ring with him at this point. A couple interesting points though. Martinez, you know, a lot of people saying, oh, Chavez didn't get off his punches. Let's not forget that a big part of that was because of the way Martinez fought. And this was revealed in 24/7 that Chavez rarely comes in with a jab. If he does, that left hook is the only hand he throws a hook with. That's his power punch. That's where everything is set up from. Every time Martinez would jab and throw that straight left, he would circle to his right, Chavez's left, and immediately blunt the chances of that left hook coming back. So that's part one. Another interesting point that was made by a fan of ours on Facebook, it said, when we saw Floyd Mayweather get buckled by Shane Mosley in the second round of his fight, you could argue similarly. Now Martinez was in much more danger than Mayweather was in that round, but had Chavez hurt Martinez in round 3 or 5, somewhere in the middle rounds, and then recovered and gone on to coast for the rest of the rounds all through the rest of the fight, would we still see there an interest in in having a rematch this way?
Right.
Probably not. The timing, it really is the fact of the matter that people were interested in.
But you could also argue if Chavez would have caught him that early, would he have finished him?
Right. And that's it's another good argument. I mean, one of the reasons I like a rematch is because I think that they might make a better undercard and we'll have other good fights to go with it.
Possibly, even though Roman Martinez, Rocky Martinez, and Miguel Beltran, that may be the fight of the year.
12 rounds,
and
non-stop.
it's also Soto Carras and Marcos Maidana, which we'll talk about in a second. But going back to Chavez quickly. Now the question is, will he get suspended? Which the answer will probably be yes.
Yeah.
How long will he be out? Will he come back? I mean, is boxing even in his focus right now? Because he may say, you know what, I don't want to box anymore. He may come back and say, hey, I screwed up. I want the rematch. Does Martinez even give him the rematch now that the positive test has come to light? I mean, he doesn't have to wait around. Martinez is 37 years old. He needs to get on with his career and put a stamp on his legacy.
Martinez has gone on record, and let's also, before we get to the next steps, he tore his meniscus in his knee and broke one of his hands, so he's going
he's going to be out for a little bit too.
By the time he's back and healed, I mean, maybe Chavez's suspension will already be over, whatever comes in. Martinez has gone on record though as saying after the fight he said he would give Chavez Jr. a rematch, but the fight he wants is Miguel Cotto. He went on record in saying that he prefers that. Now, Cotto was ringside for a fight that we're going to talk about shortly, Canelo versus Lopez. And rumor is that if it's not Mayweather, it's Cotto for Canelo's Ultimate Showdown in May for 4th, 2013. But I think Martinez does have a little bit of flexibility. All the names that you mentioned, a little bit earlier could foreseeably be in with Martinez. I think whatever his next fight is the cap on his legacy. In terms of fight appeal, if it's a rematch with Chavez Jr., his legacy goes out with him beating for a second time a young champion who left a little bit of doubt at the end of the fight. If he fights Mayweather, who comes up, or if he fights Cotto, if he beats any of these guys, they're the biggest names on his resume to date.
And he can want Cotto all he wants. Cotto's gonna beat Austin Trout, in my opinion, and he's gonna go on to fight Canelo Alvarez in May. Canelo Alvarez, as much as they want to sell me on that Mayweather fight, and you know what?
Transition, by the way.
It's called a transition in the TV world. As much as they want to sell that Mayweather Canelo fight, I see Canelo fighting Cotto, especially if it's Cinco de Mayo. You're selling a Mexican champion against a Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
You go back Rosario Chavez, you go Gomez, Salvador Sanchez, all the wars between Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, and it sells. The fans will be going nuts. All the Puerto Rican fans will go. All the Mexican fans will go. It's a sellout. It's a big event.
Yeah.
You can build a nice card around it. Mayweather, even when he turns 38, 39, 40, is still Mayweather. does Canelo right now, coming off a win against Josecito Lopez, which was a walk in the park?
Yeah.
Is he ready for a Mayweather? No, take on the champion that's not gonna move as much, who's good, especially if he beats Austin Trout, and he's gonna be there to give the fans a war, give the fans what they want. That's the next fight we'll see. And Canelo still probably needs one more fight in between here and now, because that Josecito fight was a bit of a joke.
It proves nothing. Canelo is apparently on the radar to fight on December 8th as a comeback fight, as he should. And the guy needs to fight a legit 154-pound fighter. I mean, everyone he's gone up against, I mean, did Canelo look good? Yeah. But he's fighting a guy who's a natural junior welterweight.
Look, he's gonna fight a legit contender with as little risk as possible. Right. And even though the guy I'm gonna mention does provide a lot of risk because he's an ugly fighter, it's gonna be Carlos Molina. Carlos Molina does not hit. I mean, as much as I love Carlos Molina because he's a spoiler, he's that guy that comes in and and makes everybody look bad. He can't punch worth a lick. I mean, right. he can't hurt anybody. So you put Molina, he's a 154-pounder, he's a legit contender. Can't argue that, but he doesn't hit hard, so he's not gonna knock out Canelo Alvarez. He's not gonna jeopardize a fight from here till May with Miguel Cotto. And you could say the same for Cotto. Austin Trout is not putting away Miguel Cotto.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, Trout is going to, mess things up the same way that he's going to make it a dirty fight. Molina will do the same with Canelo. I like that fight. I think that's a good one because it represents a real challenge for Canelo. He hasn't fought a boxer. He hasn't fought anyone at 154 pounds. Let's call it what it is.
Right.
A lot of people think that Canelo is the next big thing, and he may be. At 154 pounds, he's still 22 years old. He may be the next big thing. If I'm Canelo, I'm begging for Cotto in May of 2013 because
he took some shots from Josecito, but then again, it's a 140-pounder. Right. Who's really not known for his knockout power.
Those punches coming back from Miguel Cotto is a much different story against Canelo Lopez. Even
Canelo Alvarez.
Right. Canelo Alvarez. Whoever the hell this redheaded Mexican is.
and Canelo.
Yeah, exactly.
Had a love child.
But for what it is, Canelo fought. The fight he was supposed to fight. He took, a bout that was supposed to be Paul Williams, then Victor Ortiz. This is what was available for him, in that time. He did what he was supposed to do. Everyone says this every time he fights. It's time to step up, and it's time to step up.
and another fight on that card, David, which was very interesting. Soto Karass against Maidana. Maidana, they've tried to sell him as a champion, as a top fighter for years. I mean, he beat Victor Ortiz. He barely beat Eric Morales, who at the time, we had kind of like shunned away, and all of a sudden he comes back and gives a fight to Danny Garcia. So Morales isn't completely gone. Beats a couple of other fighters. Hell of a fight against Amir Khan.
Yeah.
But some of the other fights have been unimpressive, and somebody on Twitter, who Scott. I don't know if you pronounce it Christ or Chris.
Chris, I think Scott Chris.
At Bad Left Hook. He was saying something interesting. He's like, look, all these boxing writers were bitching about Maidana possibly facing Keith Thurman.
Right.
And those are the same writers who were either praising a fight against a journeyman like Soto Karass, or also saying, oh, we don't like Soto Karass either. Then what the hell do you want for Marcos Maidana to do? Maidana wins a fight. I mean, he's a hell of a fighter, probably one of the most exciting fighters in all of boxing. Sure. But does that make him a top fighter? No. Right now, I was thinking while I was watching the replay of that fight, and I said Keith Thurman may beat Marcos Maidana if they fight.
Yeah, he could. I mean, for what it's worth, let's also take a step back. Maidana looked as good as he looked in a while. Robert Garcia transformed him. He was boxing. He still gets hit a lot.
He got hit way too much.
We'll wrap up with this too because I know we're short on time. But Maidana needs to be matched very carefully. He is not an elite contender, but he's a very exciting fighter. Never a boring fight. The guy comes and brings war every single time, no matter who he's in the ring with. But there are guys like Keith Thurman, I agree 100%, he should be steered clear from. But he's made quite a bit of progress with Robert Garcia in a short time. I'm very interested to see what happens next.
Before we go, I want to touch on something really quick. The sport of boxing, and we don't pretend it's really in the mainstream, at least not anymore, like it used to be, or if at all, when it comes to covering the sport and the major sports. A couple weeks ago, Joe Girardi, the manager of the New York Yankees, had an argument with Joel Sherman from the New York Post.
Sure.
They got in each other's face. I mean, they said they had to be separated. If not, they were going to fist fight in the locker room. Joel Sherman still covers the Yankees. He still interviews Joe Girardi after the games. My point is, this past weekend, there was a bit of a controversy with Golden Boy Promotions, in which they came out and said on Friday during the weigh-in that the Canelo fight was a sellout. Now, writers like Kevin Iole, Dan Raphael, Kieran Mulvaney, a couple of other writers were able to investigate, because you can't do that. You could just call Ticketmaster, go online, and they were able to find out that tickets were still available. And Oscar De La Hoya, after going back and forth on Twitter with them for a little bit, blocks them on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll go as far as to
The golden girl.
as to deny them a credential. But what does it say about boxing when you have promoters, especially a promoter, who when he first started said, I'm here to clean up the sport from all the garbage that's going on, and you go out and do something like that? Man, take criticism like a freaking man.
Nobody's above it, and Gabriel Montoya has been
Gabriel
denied
Montoya,
credentials
exactly.
from Golden Boy. You know, it's interesting when you're in that position of power and someone's threatening your credibility, you know, as happened with De La Hoya in this scenario. It's, you know, it's easy for him to say that you're gonna have a moral high ground.
But my point is, don't put yourself in that position, because you know, guys like Don King didn't come out and say stupid shit. You know, you assumed there were fights maybe for Chavez that were fixed, like the second fight against Randall, Benito against Rosendo Alvarez, the first fight, which was a big stink in Mexico. You know, the stories of the fighters being robbed by Don King, but Don King never, you know, came out and said, oh yeah, this is sold out, and then you know, came out and denied stuff like that.
Put a microphone in front of some of these guys' faces and they'll say whatever they need to say.
This is a different time, and it happens with athletes, it happens with promoters, it happens with politicians. This is a world that we live in where we're being monitored 24/7. It's like, you know, we have Boxing During Dinner on YouTube. You can go on YouTube and find whatever. If you say something, it's going to be on the record.
It's on the record.
It's on the record that I love Carlos Molina. Anybody will find it. If I say to somebody right now, I don't love Carlos Molina, they'll say, hey, Boxing During Dinner, episodes 10, 15, 22,
1, 2,
37,
3,
38.
4.
Exactly. So, you know what? I love, you know, my people at Golden Boy Promotions that I know. You know, they have big events that I do want to go to, so do not block me or deny me a credential. But come on, man. It's like, it's time to grow up, and it has to start with promoters.
Agreed.
So, busy weekend of boxing, David.
Yeah, lots to talk about.
I don't know if we'll have a busy weekend like that for a while, but, you know, we can only hope, and you know where to write us. Your comments are always appreciated.
As always. And thanks for continuing to provide. We obviously included some comments from tonight. Next week, we're going to have a special edition. I'm looking forward to this because it's going to be my birthday for Boxing During Dinner. Any of you here in Miami?
And we will be back at Rondazzo's.
We will be back at Rondazzo's next week, Monday, September 24th. You guys are more than welcome to come out to Rondazzo's between 7 and 7:30 p.m. We'll be setting up, having a celebration, and this is a chance for us to hang out with some of our fans in the local area too. So we'll see you guys there next week.
See you, Oscar.